Hi, I'm the Guitar Trooper, U2's favorite old guy. The state of Oklahoma has places that are wide open prairies with seemingly endless horizon. Jimmy Webb had been on desolate highways in his native Oklahoma many times over the years. As is typical with older highways, there are telephone lines and power lines running parallel to the lanes of the highway. Trying to stay awake, he takes notice of the panorama of the horizon and the poles whizzing by with the attached overhead telephone lines, and then a lonely workman comes into view on one of the poles. Jimmy won't forget that image. The stark scene of a line workman posted at the top of a pole with a telephone in hand against the flat Oklahoma prairie and the open sky in the summer heat will inspire the lines of a song that Jimmy had to compose in a single afternoon at the request of a session guitarist turned solo artist named Glen Campbell, who wanted to record a song about something geographical. He kept the image and changed the location. Not only does Jimmy honor the request, but he also ends up contributing the most iconic part of the recording himself at the keys of his own Gulbranson organ. It's May 27th, 1968. Jimmy Webb is a hot item in the L.A. music scene. He had written By the Time I Get to Phoenix in 1965, and in 1967 he wrote Up, Up, and Away, both runaway hits. By the Time I Get to Phoenix was, of course, a smash hit by Glen Campbell. Even though Jimmy was the composer of that hit, they never met, or they hadn't even spoken before today. But that's about to change. Glen and his producer Al DeLore are working on Glen's next album in Hollywood's Capitol Recording Studios. They are literally in the midst of a recording session. In the late morning, Jimmy's phone rings.
Hey, Jimmy, it's Glen Campbell. Listen, my producer Al and I are putting together a new album, and we're in a bind for material. All we have are a bunch of crappy songs. Do you think you can write a follow-up to By the Time I Get to Phoenix? Something about a place?
This is not only an unexpected, but also daunting request. A recording artist is asking for a song made to order and made quickly, because the artist is hanging the completion of an album on the song he has just asked you to write. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to get away from songs about places. But let me work on it.
Well, just something geographical.
Jim hangs up. He digs into his memories for a concept that will fit Glen's request. In a few moments, Jimmy remembers his vivid image of a lonely workman on a telephone pole. What was that lineman thinking about? Maybe it was his work, his girlfriend, and his love for her blending into a single sentiment? As the morning ends, Jimmy begins writing a song and works on it all afternoon, but can only compose a chorus and 2 verses before Glen and Al call again. Jimmy doesn't consider it to be finished, but Glen is calling back every couple of hours, wanting to know if the song is ready, and they are very impatient, as they are against a hard deadline of studio time. Finally, Glen says, "Just send it over." Jimmy complies with a lead sheet and a demo tape, where he just hums the missing 3rd verse. May 27, 1968, Capitol Sound Studios, Hollywood, California, Studio A, 7 p.m. Al DeLore, whose uncle incidentally was a lineman, reads the first line and is hooked. He knows he has a hit song. Glen and 5 session musicians lay down the rhythm track. Besides Glen, there are Al DeLore himself on piano, James Burton on guitar, Al Casey on guitar, Don Bagley on bass, Carol Kay on bass, and Jim Gordon on drums. Al and Glen decide to make the missing 3rd verse an instrumental. To get the solo to have the sound reminiscent of an electronic hum, Glen borrows a Danelectro Longhorn bass from Carol Kay and performs the instrumental with a light tremolo effect over the 3rd verse rhythm track. Al doesn't like the idea of starting off the song with just a chord either, and asks Carol to come up with a lead-in. The ever-inventive Carol Kay creates a 6-note intro on her Fender Precision bass. An editorial note here. Although it is certainly verifiable that Carol Kay played the intro bass line, there are conflicting accounts regarding the instrument that she used. Looking across sources, and especially at Carol's responses to interview questions regarding the session, I have concluded that the bass guitar used on the rhythm track was her Fender Precision bass. There is no doubt about the third verse solo, though. Glen Campbell stated in interviews that he borrowed a 6-string Danelectro Longhorn from Carol for the solo overdub, and this has been corroborated by Carol. Although the track is completed in a single session, the exact number of takes that the musicians needed for the backing track is lost to history. Meanwhile, Jimmy Webb has no idea what happened with Wichita Lineman and assumes it was rejected. Sometime after the first session in May, Jimmy talks with Glen saying, "I guess you guys didn't like the song." Glen says, "Oh, we cut that. But it wasn't done. I was just humming that last bit." Well, it's done now. Mid-June 1968, Jimmy Webb's communal residence in Los Angeles, California. An audit of an acetate pressing by Glen and Al reveals that the recording is not yet complete, besides the planned strings and horns. There is still something missing. What the song needs is a sound to somehow mimic line signals. Now, Jimmy is the owner of a Gulbranson 700 series organ, one that is very advanced for 1968, having some synthesis capabilities. One of the sounds that the organ can produce is a pulsating signal called a reiterate. It is a slightly more allegro repeat than you get with an echo circuit. He plays it at his house for Glen. "That's perfect! Let's get that on the record." Due to its size, the only way to move an instrument like that is to partially disassemble it, but that's not a problem. Glen has a crew dismantle the organ, transport it to, according to Jimmy Webb, the Western Recorder Studio 3, and then reassemble it. That evening, the final overdub of the rhythm track is performed by Jimmy Webb, a haunting, pulsating sound that is used during the intro and the vamp fade-out. August 14th, 1968. Capitol Sound Studios, Studio A, 5:30 p.m. The rhythm track with vocal is all that they have, and now it's time to complete the song with strings, horns, and fills. Al DeLory has written a score for a 24-piece string and horn section that plays behind the entire song. By 8:30 that evening, the string and horn accompaniment is recorded. Wichita Lineman is complete. Not only is it the lead single for the new album, but it also lends its title to the album. Released on the week of October 26, 1968, Wichita Lineman confirmed Glen Campbell's status as a solo performer by becoming his next top 10 hit. It topped the American Country Music Chart for 2 weeks and the Adult Contemporary Chart for 6 weeks and was certified gold by the RIAA in January of '69. In Canada, the single topped both the RPM National and Country Singles charts, and in the UK it reached number 7. The Wichita Lineman album went number 1 on the country chart on November 30th, 1968. Although attaining number 1 status on the country chart for an album was not to be a rarity for him, the Wichita Lineman album became the only one by Glen Campbell to be number 1 on both the country and the pop charts. Glen Campbell went on to become a stellar solo performer, recording artist, actor, and TV personality. In spite of struggles with substance abuse and an unstable married life in his younger years, his career and popularity endured until his death in August of 2017 from complications of Alzheimer's disease. Jimmy Webb, now almost 80, has remained active in the music industry for decades, not only as a composer, but a producer and solo artist. Besides Glen Campbell, his collaborations included Richard Harris, Linda Ronstadt, The Fifth Dimension, The Supremes, and Art Garfunkel. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1986 and received the National Academy of Songwriters Lifetime Achievement Award in 1993. He received the Songwriters Hall of Fame Johnny Mercer Award in 2003, the ASCAP Voice of Music Award in 2006, and the Ivor Novello Special International Award in 2012. Jimmy Webb is also the only artist ever to receive Grammy Awards for music lyrics and orchestration. Al DeLory was very active in the early 60s as both a session musician, arranger, and producer. He partnered with Glen Campbell for the biggest of Glen's hits from the mid-60s to the early 70s, as well as being a session musician for hits from Phil Spector, like Hey Little Cobra from the Ripcords, and he also worked on the Pet Sound sessions for Brian Wilson. Al DeLory died on February 12, 2012 in Nashville, Tennessee, at the age of 82. And even after over 50 years, the Wichita Lineman is still on the line. Glen Campbell's 1968 recording of Wichita Lineman is now included in the Library of Congress National Recording Registry. Hey everybody, thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do me a favor and click on that like, thumbs up icon and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. You can also use comments to suggest video subject matter regarding pop music and pop music culture between the 1950s and the 1970s. A great thing that you can also do to support the channel is just share the video with your friends. Just click on the arrow icon and pick the destination person and help us expand the audience. Speaking of supporting the channel, this would be a great time to subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber. It's easy and it's free, and it lets YouTube know that you support the channel. Just click on the subscribe button and be sure to select the top notification bell on the next drop-down menu so that you will be notified whenever I post new content for the public. If you would like the opportunity to see content a few days earlier when it is viewable only to channel members, you can upgrade your subscription to become one. Just click on the join icon and follow the instructions. It's not free to upgrade, but it's as dirt cheap as YouTube would let me make it. Thanks again for watching.